Good morning, everybody. The meeting will come to order. Welcome and thank you for joining today's hearing entitled Safeguarding U.S. Agriculture, the Role of the National Animal Health Laboratory Network. After brief opening remarks, members will receive testimony from our witnesses today, and then the hearing will be open to questions. In consultation with the ranking member and pursuant to Rule 11E, I want to make members of the subcommittee aware that other members of the full committee may be joining us today. I'm excited to chair this hearing of the House Agriculture Committee Subcommittee on Livestock, Dairy, and Poultry, where we will focus on the important work of the National Animal Health Laboratory Network, or NAHL. As a fifth-generation Kansas farm kid, I grew up riding pens and doctoring sick cattle at my family's preconditioning feedlot, and I intimately understand and appreciate the vital role the animal health plays in all of livestock and our poultry operations. The National Animal Health Laboratory Network is a critical piece of our ability to respond to and mitigate foreign animal diseases. Originally comprised of 12 laboratories when it was created in 2002, the NAHL network has grown to include over 60 state and university laboratories, including the Kansas State University Veterinary Diagnostics Laboratory in Manhattan, Kansas, my district and alma mater. These labs are strategically placed across the United States to support animal agriculture by developing and increasing the capabilities and capacities to support early detection, rapid response, and appropriate recovery from high-consequence animal diseases. Put simply, they are the first line of our defense. These labs do not operate in a vacuum. The NAHL network is successful because of partnerships between federal, state, and university-associated animal health laboratories and experts. This partnership is critical to response efforts when foreign animal diseases are detected, such as highly pathogenic avian influenza, New World screwworm, African swine fever, and unfortunately so many more. Today, you will hear from a panel of experts who all work at NAHL's laboratories. These experts will be able to share pertinent information about the critical work they do, whether it be tracking the New World screwworm outbreak in Mexico, identifying the move of high-path entry into dairy cattle in Texas, working with the National Bio and Agro Defense Facility in Kansas, or crucial swine testing in Iowa. This hearing could not come at a better time to highlight the work of the NAHL laboratories and talk about the need for additional resources. As of 2 weeks ago, funding for the NAHL, as well as funding for the National Animal Disease Preparedness and Response Program and National Animal Vaccine and Veterinary Countermeasures Bank, was substantially increased in the One Big Beautiful Bill. The One Big Beautiful Bill included $233 million per year for the three-legged stool, with $10 million per year directed towards the NAHL laboratories, which is on top of existing discretionary federal spending. This funding will increase diagnostic capabilities, improve research, assist in disease surveillance, and strengthen our overall capacity as a nation to prevent, detect, and mitigate foreign animal diseases. I'm proud of the work of this committee did to shore up our animal health resources and protect the herds and flocks that bring so much value to our producers and national security. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses about the work they do day in and day out in their roles with the National Animal Health Laboratory Network. I'm excited to hear about how the increased funding will help their operation of these laboratories, which foreign animal diseases they see as the most consequential, and how we as Congress can be good partners to them. Again, thank you all for being here today. With that, I'd now like to welcome the distinguished ranking member, my friend and the gentleman from California, Mr. Costas, for any opening remarks he would like to give.
Thank you very much, Chairman Finstra, and for members of the subcommittee. It's indeed, I think, a very important subcommittee hearing that we're holding here this morning because high-path avian flu has infected many parts of our country on a regional basis, and we've had different efforts with varying degrees of success to deal with this, but certainly we are not unaccustomed to having infectious diseases impacting our livestock and poultry industries across the country, and how we handle those and how we respond is critical, and therefore this hearing, I think, is totally appropriate and important. I want to thank the chairman not only for holding this hearing for that reason, but thank our witnesses. The witnesses that we have here have over 20 years of experience with grown to include over 60 labs that make up our detection system for animal disease control. As I always like to say, food is a national security issue. It is, and we should address it in that fashion. The laboratory network plays key roles in ensuring we have a safe and secure food supply chain for all Americans at their dinner table every evening. This laboratory network is part of that safety response. It's a foundation that allows us to respond rapidly to animal disease outbreaks simultaneously while keeping our food supply chain safe, and that's a challenge. As HiPath has gone over recently in different parts of our country, in California, where we have 20% of America's milk production, we've had over 70% infection in our dairy herds, which is critical mass. And of course, we've got a significant poultry industry as well. And trying to handle the two over the last 18 months, we've had our hands full. But we have an extra effort that is done by our efforts with our state veterinarian, Dr. Jones, who I will introduce in a moment. The only way, though, that we can properly trace and avoid further spread or spillover infection, I think, is if we're able to respond quickly. And that's why I think this hearing is so important, and accurately to identify and then use the information to allocate appropriate resources to address the problem. And NAHLN is a great example of which highlights the importance of how federal and state partnerships work together. And I think we have had a good example in California of that partnership working. We have our main level 1 lab at the University of California, Davis, which has played a critical role in coordinating with laboratory network by providing resources throughout California and the nation in combating high-path avian flu. And this is just one example that demonstrates the importance of the laboratory network and the role it plays in greater effort of preventing animal disease that are being spread throughout the United States. And these labs talk to each other on a national basis, which is essential. When we have multiple state outbreaks of animal disease, such as the high-path avian influenza, it's absolutely essential that we have centralized operations coordinated across our states. And we're going to hear about that this morning. The role that NAHLN Central Office plays in combating disease response came into spotlight earlier this year in February. I was disappointed to hear with the DOJ efforts that the administration fired a quarter of the employees at the Central Coordinating Office. This has occurred in the middle of a prolonged high-path avian influenza outbreak. I can't think of a worse time to decide to cut these positions when coordinating disease response. Think about it. We've seen uninformed, short-sighted decisions such as this one made, and it's not helpful. And I think we've already seen the impacts of those decisions. I'm glad to hear the chairman talk about the one big. I don't know that we agree that it was beautiful, but that there's additional funding that may allow us to fill the gaps from the cuts that were made in February, because I think that's important, and I think we want to get the opinion of our experts, our witnesses, to opine on that. Let me close by saying that we're supportive of these programs to combat animal disease. It's critical that we work together to continue to support systems such as the laboratory network. I really believe that's critical, along with corresponding research that allows us to create better diagnostic tools and preventive measures, which is utilizing the best available science possible. A lot of us have ag backgrounds, and I look forward to hearing from our expert witnesses. But as a part of Costa Brothers Dairy, I had a lot of experience working with our veterinarian, Doc Johnson, big animal vet. And he kept our herds in good shape over the years. Sometimes when my dog had a little problem, and I'd bring it to him, and he says, "I don't do small animals." And then he'd say, "Bring it over here, I'll look at it." So anyway, our vets are so valuable. And so by way of mentioning that, let me introduce a individual that's going to testify. I have another hearing I have to go to, so I want to introduce our witness who I noted a moment ago. Dr. Annette Jones is a veterinarian herself. She is the state veterinarian and director of animal health and food safety services for the state of California, the #1 agricultural state in the nation. She has held the director since 2004. In that capacity, she oversees an annual budget of $45.5 million, I believe. 222 employees work with her, engaged in programs from animal health, milk and dairy, food safety, meat and poultry inspection, livestock identification. She also works closely with the California Animal Health and Food Safety Laboratory System. In addition to her role as director, she was appointed to the California State Veterinarian in 2010. She is a graduate of UC Davis, very proud of that, and with a degree in economics, and she received her DVM from UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine. She is a total, complete package and well-respected among animal science industry in California and around the country. And Dr. Jones, we're glad you could make it here to talk about your vast experience. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to provide that introduction of Dr. Jones to the subcommittee. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick and Member, for your opening comments and for doing the introduction of one of our 4 panelists. We'll now introduce our other 3 panelists, and I want everyone to understand that in talking to them ahead of time, every one of them had flight issues coming in. I don't think a single person, one of our witnesses, got in before midnight. Some people made it and their luggage did not, but appreciate you all being here this morning, and more than that, your commitment to animals and keeping our food
Thanks
supply
for
safe.
pointing that out, Mr. Chairman. Some of us spent 2 hours on the tarmac yesterday afternoon waiting to get off the plane. So I'm sympathetical to all of you. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you being here today. I'll introduce the next witness, which will be Dr. Jamie Rietelek, the director of Kansas Veterinary Diagnostics Laboratory at Kansas State University. Dr. Rietelek's primary responsibility is director of Kansas's only veterinary diagnostic laboratory. Before becoming director, she served as a diagnostic pathologist for KVDL, which involves biopsy and necropsy services from referring veterinarians and the KSVU, or the K-State Veterinary Center. She also oversees daily operations and provides guidance in the development of new tests, teaches a course at veterinary biology, and provides researchers with pathology support for collaborative studies. Dr. Rietelek is a graduate of both Kansas State University and the University of Nebraska. From one Kansas to another, thank you for being here this morning. After we hear from Dr. Rietelek, we'll hear from Dr. Terry Hensley, who is the Assistant Agency Director for Diagnostic Services at the Texas A&M Veterinary Medical Diagnostics Laboratory, a state agency in the Texas A&M University system. Dr. Hensley oversees veterinary services, intra-agency collaborations, case coordination, and consultations with TVMDL's clients. He also serves as a liaison between the TVMDL and multiple regional, state, and federal partner organizations to oversee the agency's regulatory testing components. Dr. Hensley is a graduate of Texas A&M University, including his DVM, and completed his postdoctorate at the University of Georgia. And next, introduce our final witness. I'm going to turn it over to the gentleman from Iowa, Representative Feenstra, to introduce the next witness.
Thank you, Chairman Mann. It's an honor to introduce Dr. Roger Main, a nationally recognized leader in animal health diagnostics and a fellow proud Iowan. Dr. Main serves as a professor and director of the Iowa State University Veterinarian Diagnostic Laboratory, which serves as one of the cornerstones of the National Animal Health Laboratory Network. Under Dr. Main's leadership, ISU's lab processes over 125,000 diagnostic cases and runs more than 1.7 million tests annually, directly supporting the farmers, veterinarians, and industries that power Iowa and the country's agricultural community. He brings decades of experience in swine medicine and clinical research and holds both a DVM from Iowa State and a PhD from Kansas State. Iowa State continues to lead the nation in agricultural science, and Dr. Main's work is vital to safeguarding animal health, food security, national security, and the future of American agriculture. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Main. We look forward to hearing your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Feenstra, and thank you to all of our witnesses again for joining us today. We will now proceed to your testimony. You will each have 5 minutes. The timer in front of you will count down to 0, at which point your time has expired. Dr. Riedelick, please begin when you are ready.
Good morning, Chairman Mann, Ranking Member Costa, and members of the subcommittee. It is an honor to be in front of you today to talk about the importance of the National Animal Health Laboratory Network, or NALN, and its unique relationships among state and federal laboratories, state veterinarians, and state departments of agriculture. We will discuss some of the key aspects that make NALN a vital federal network. Thank you for this invitation. I had the privilege to be the director of the Kansas Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory and a professor at Kansas State University. The Kansas Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory, or KVDL, is the primary and only accredited laboratory in the state of Kansas, located at Kansas State University, a land-grant university. The location at a land-grant university allows for specialized academic faculty to train future generations and work with clients along with federal partners to serve a diverse range of clients and a broad range of diseases. KVDL has approximately 120 staff. About 25 of those are faculty with various specialties and training. We see over 213 species. We have over 213 species in our database, perform 600 different tests, and approximately 600,000 tests annually. Although a diverse species caseload, the most common is cattle, KVDL is a critical pillar to support the $12.9 billion Kansas livestock industry. An important part of protection of Kansas livestock industry, and thus the United States, is the relationships and coordination provided by the NALN. NALN is a vital resource and call tree or communication system to protect United States animal agriculture by providing an early warning system for economically important outbreaks and foreign animal diseases, along with new threats such as the New World screwworm, which NALN labs are currently watching for. As stated, the NALN network includes 64 laboratories across the United States, which includes KVDL, a level 1 laboratory in the network. In addition, there are several federal or parent laboratories that are part of this network, which include the National Veterinary Service Laboratory in Ames, Iowa, the Foreign Animal Disease Diagnostic Laboratory, FADL, currently split between Plum Island, New York, and the National Bio-Agro Defense System facility in Manhattan, Kansas. There is also currently a surveillance laboratory in Puerto Rico for African swine fever. The NALN has built a strong, harmonious relationship between federal, state, and university veterinary diagnostic laboratories with over 20 years of experience in protecting animal agriculture in the United States through surveillance and disease testing. In addition to providing communication, coordination, and funding, NALN also provides standardized testing procedures and laboratory accuracy testing known as proficiency testing. Standardized protocols and proficiency testing provide consistent, trustworthy, and high-capacity testing among all 64 NALN laboratories in critical disease events. FADL, from the NBAF facility, has produced and distributed 800 proficiency test panels for several high-impact diseases, including African swine fever, classical swine fever, foot-mouth disease, Seneca Valley virus, to NALN labs nationwide, including my lab, KVDL. NALN coordination of the state laboratories, funding to support the laboratories, weekly communication calls, standard protocols, and proficiency testing have resulted in a network with redundancy to support each other. KVDL is currently performing overflow testing for California and Colorado. This coordination and overflow testing, when a state laboratory is overwhelmed, is directed by the NALN. The federal funding appropriated to NALN that is transferred to state laboratories in the network and for those laboratories is often used to support equipment purchases, service contracts, software, and informational technology upgrades, travel for training, outbreak exercises, which are important in preparation for us, and salary support for our staff. The funding makes a huge impact on the VDL operations and is very appreciated to help support our laboratory. In summary, NALN, with over 20 years of experience, standardized and controlled testing, and coordination of 64 laboratories, provides high testing capacity and numbers, redundancy in testing to control outbreaks and surveil for foreign animal disease on U.S. soil. In my opinion, NALN is the best example of a federal organization harmoniously coordinating disease response among state laboratories and state departments of agriculture. When funds are appropriated to NALN, federal dollars are supporting state laboratories, protecting the U.S. economy, and food supply, preventing zoonosis, those diseases transferred from animals to humans, maintaining exports and trade channels, and addressing other critical interests. Thank you for allowing me to discuss the importance of Nolan today.
Thank you, Dr. Riedeleck. Next up, Dr. Hensley, please begin when you are ready.
Good morning, Chairman Mann, Ranking Member Costa, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. I'm Terry Hensley, Assistant Agency Director of the Texas A&M Veterinary Medical Diagnostic Laboratory, or TVMDL. I have the privilege of serving at one of our nation's busiest veterinary diagnostic laboratories, running almost 1 million tests annually. Most of our caseload comes from within Texas, but we also receive samples from all 50 states and internationally. Animal diseases don't respect geographic boundaries. Therefore, it's imperative that our veterinary diagnostic laboratories in all 50 states have the same capabilities to detect diseases quickly and accurately to limit their spread and mitigate the impact on animal agriculture. The NOLAN has built a responsive, effective partnership of state and federal laboratories that leverages resources and talent across the nation. The NOLAN Program Office works tirelessly to strengthen relationships with every member laboratory so we can respond as a network to the ever-increasing disease incursions threatening our nation's animal agriculture industries. It's crucial that the NOLAN be fortified and enabled to provide the critical diagnostic testing needed during animal disease outbreaks. Ensuring NOLAN has sufficient funding will aid in addressing our nation's need for a safe, stable, and nutritious food supply. We want to thank Congress for the increased funding for NOLAN in the reconciliation bill and for Congressman Ronnie Jackson for helping lead those efforts. TVMDL was one of the original NOLAN core laboratories. Texas has features that increase its risk for the introduction of animal disease threats, including a 1,248-mile-long border with Mexico and multiple international land, sea, and airports. Texas imports 1 million cattle annually from Mexico and 2.5 million cattle from other U.S. states. In addition to livestock, Texas has an abundance of feral, wild, and farmed wildlife species. 3 major migratory flyways cross the state. The interface between domestic and wildlife species poses a tremendous challenge for disease surveillance, detection, and eradication. TVMDL's work protects Texas' $24 billion animal agriculture industries while enhancing the response preparedness of the NOLAN. An example of synergy occurred in March of 2024 when many dairies in the Texas Panhandle reported a mysterious illness in lactating cows. The cows showed various signs of illness, but most striking was the dramatic decrease in milk production. Dairy veterinarians sent samples to TVMDL as well as our fellow NOLAN labs at Cornell University and Iowa State University. For several weeks, our laboratories ran every test that might provide an explanation, but there were no definitive answers. When dairies reported large numbers of dead birds and cats, the possibility of a connection between highly pathogenic avian influenza and sick cattle was suggested. The NOLAN laboratories at Texas A&M, Cornell, and Iowa State collaborated using shared samples from sick cows and demonstrated the presence of H5N1 virus in mammary tissue and milk. These results were reported to the NOLAN and confirmed by the National Veterinary Services laboratories. On Monday, March 25th, 2024, USDA made the unprecedented announcement of an outbreak of highly pathogenic avian influenza in U.S. dairy cattle. Texas may soon be ground zero for another incursion if the deadly New World screwworm fly invades our state from Mexico. While we hope this pest can be contained south of the border, hope, as they say, is not a strategy. The USDA's National Animal Health Laboratory Network is, however, one vital strategy, serving as a cornerstone of the United States' efforts to protect livestock and ensure the health and productivity of the animal agriculture sector. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your testimony, Dr. Hensley. Next up, Dr. Main, please begin when you are ready.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Roger Main. I have the honor of serving as a professor and the director of the Iowa State Veterinary Diagnostic Lab located in Ames, Iowa. The Iowa State Veterinary Diagnostic Lab is the only full-service and fully accredited veterinary diagnostic lab in our state and serves as the official veterinary diagnostic lab for the state of Iowa. Our team at the ISU VDL proudly serves as an active contributor to the USDA's National Animal Health Lab Network. The NALN delivers a national standard of best-in-class veterinary diagnostic technologies, testing capabilities, and coordination of information among federal, state, and private sector veterinarians from across the country who are responsible for surveilling and responding to animal health emergencies of high consequence to U.S. animal agriculture. As you know, agriculture is critically important to the state of Iowa and its people, past, present, and future. Iowa is a national leader in animal agriculture, both in production and processing, and a substantive exporter of value-added food products. This is why the ISU VDL has a long history of being front and center in diagnosing and supporting responses of emerging diseases of high consequence to Iowa and U.S. animal agriculture. As Randy mentioned, ISU VDL's team of 30 faculty and 155 technical staff processed greater than 125 case submissions, conducting more than 1.7 million assays annually. ISU VDL carries amongst the largest food animal-centered caseloads in our country, with submissions of livestock and poultry or origin representing greater than 90% of the cases received. ISU VDL's principal clientele are the practicing veterinarians who are working directly in the support of the veterinary healthcare needs of U.S. farmers and ranchers on a daily basis. This connectivity to the boots on the ground of Iowa and U.S. animal agriculture positions our laboratory very well in our role as a Level 1 lab in the National Animal Health Lab Network. Our work includes receiving and supporting endemic, emerging, and foreign animal disease case investigations, surveillance, and supporting response efforts in support of the NALN's mission to protect U.S. animal health, public health, and the nation's food supply. In my view, the NALN is an exemplary example of a highly functional and effective partnership amongst federal, state, university, and industry partners. The efficiencies of the federal funds invested in the NALN are greatly amplified through the leveraging of the substantive laboratory infrastructure, subject matter expertise, quality assured laboratory testing capabilities, research scientists, and the direct connectivity to the front lines of U.S. animal agriculture that exists at our university and state diagnostic labs across the country. The federal support provided through the NALN is a cornerstone for enhancing national preparedness to effectively monitor and respond to the ever-increasing risk and realities of emerging disease of high importance to both animal and human health. ISU VDL's role in working in partnership with our USDA colleagues, practicing veterinarians, peer laboratories, and the state and federal animal health officials from across the country in support of the detection and response to the high-path avian influenza outbreak impacting U.S. poultry, flocks, and dairy herds in the past 2 years is simply the most recent example of the ISU VDL and USDA NALN partners from across the country stepping up in a time of need. Such capabilities are only made possible through the federal investment in this vital network. In summary, I believe the federal investments in the NALN represent a true win-win-win. Win for U.S. animal health, public health, for U.S. agriculture more broadly, and for enhancing the security, safety, and affordability of our nation's food supply. I thank the members of this committee and leaders within USDA APHIS, both present and past, for your leadership, vision, and steadfast support for establishing and continuing to advance the capabilities and reach of the NALN across our country. Your vision and support have resulted in the development of a highly trusted and capable veterinary network of veterinary diagnostic labs that are truly world-class. In my opinion, the NALN is a crown jewel within USDA APHIS veterinary services that is uniquely American and unmatched the world around. It is something that each of us as Americans can and should take great pride in. And thank you again for the opportunity to be and speak with you here today.
Thank you, Dr. Main, for that testimony. Next up, Dr. Jones, please begin when you are ready.
Thank you for including me in this hearing today. My long tenure as state veterinarian has provided me with extensive real-world experience. I've seen effective and less effective strategies, and I'm very familiar with critical infrastructure that must be in place to mitigate the impacts of catastrophic disease outbreaks. To provide some context, I think of myself as a fire chief, and our disease control experts are deployed to contain outbreaks, much like containing an almost invisible fire. We're emergency responders, and our strategies are practiced but modified to reflect the specific situation in front of us. State and federal partners work side by side, and decisions are made in unified command. Similar to a fire response are actions like euthanizing entire flocks or halting animal and product movement needed to maintain business can be devastating to some, but are necessary to minimize the negative impacts on all the nation's herds and flocks. Continuing the analogy, the National Animal Health Laboratory Network exists to detect new pathogens that threaten our food system, animal health, or public health. It's like the smoke detector that alerts all potentially impacted animal owners and first responders to a problem early enough to reduce losses. This critical detection system also accurately tells us field responders what's in front of us so that we can modify our strategy. That brings me to my first point. We as a nation and as farmers and ranchers need that smoke detector so that even if the fire department is delayed or overwhelmed, we know there's a problem and we can act to protect our employees and animals. This also brings me to my second point. Given the weight of regulatory response decisions, testing must be accurate, consistent, and timely. That means we must have a laboratory network with surge capacity, consistent methods, and robust quality control at all member labs. The test results must stand up to scrutiny. For example, last winter, we were challenged in California with over 770 H5N1 infected dairies and 68 poultry outbreak control zones. Normally, our California lab tests about 450 samples per month for influenza. At the peak of this recent outbreak, the sample load was 12,000 samples per month, which is more than 25 times our normal workload. In those 4 months, the lab network deployed pairs of technicians from other labs to California to help with testing. Because these technicians performed the same test on the same equipment using the same standard operating procedures at their home lab, they were able to immediately expand our lab capacity. At the height of the outbreak, besides fully using the California lab, network labs in 7 other states received, processed, and electronically reported accurate, almost real-time results. My last point is more specific to our way out of the current H5N1 outbreak. I believe we must sustain 3 concerted efforts, and if even one is neglected, the other 2 will fail. The first is ongoing testing. Through active surveillance, we will detect mutations and exposure levels or prevalence so we can take informed actions to protect animals and people. Note that the network laboratories have provided over 1 million test results nationwide in response to the current outbreak. But just as I just alluded, testing alone will not make the virus disappear or get us out of this outbreak. Biosecurity is also needed, meaning actions like movement control, traffic control, personal protective equipment, sanitation, and decontamination. When viral load in the environment is below a certain threshold, we know that biosecurity is by far the best tool for preventing disease. But I have seen time and time again that even the best farm biosecurity will be overwhelmed if there is too much virus being produced by surrounding poultry, wild birds, and dairy cows. So again, biosecurity alone will not work if environmental viral load is not managed. Bringing us to the third effort, reducing virus in the environment. Currently, we do this the hard way, by euthanizing infected flocks and by allowing dairy immunity to develop after exposure. Dairy exposure means a huge percent of herd suffers through bloody, snotty noses, aborted pregnancies, no interest in food and water, and udders that dry up. This is not a path that most herd managers ever want to travel. And poultry producers must now use biosecurity to defend their flocks not only from other infected flocks and wild birds, but also from dairies that may be actively infected for months. Note that of the 17 states that have had infected dairy cows, 12 have experienced poultry outbreaks directly from those dairy cases. I believe we need dairy vaccine in the toolbox yesterday, especially for regions currently free from disease. If I were a poultry producer, a beef producer, a swine producer, or a dairy producer, I would be banging my fist on the table to vaccinate dairy cattle way ahead of poultry.
Thank you,
If
Doctor.
USDA can successfully keep trade doors open when millions of dairy cows
Dr.
are
Jones.
actively infected with H5N1, I'm
Your
confident they can get the job done for a vaccine.
Great, your time has expired. Thank you all for our witnesses for being here this morning. At this time, members will be recognized for questions in order of seniority, alternating between majority and minority members, and in order of arrival for those who joined us after the hearing convened. You'll be recognized for 5 minutes each in order to allow us to get to as many questions as possible. First, I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. The National Bio and Agri Defense Facility in Manhattan, Kansas is a state-of-the-art facility that'll help protect the nation's agriculture, farmers, and consumers against the threat and potential impacts of serious foreign animal health diseases. NBAF has biosafety levels 2, 3, and 4 laboratories, allowing them to study and diagnose the most consequential animal pathogens. NBAF plays a critical role in our animal disease preparedness and management and is an important partner to the NALD system. Dr. Riddick, how does Kansas State Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory collaborate with NBAF, and how will each of your operations supplement one another?
We are excited to have NBAF as our neighbor in Manhattan, Kansas. And so NBAF has multiple missions. One of those is research and one of those is service, which is the Null North Valley Lab that was discussed. And so the Null being a network, our interaction with them through the Null and confirmatory testing is going to be the same as all of the Null laboratories for that. The other thing that you might see us assist in NBAF is training the future technicians for them. Often entry level will come in, we will train, and they may go to work in NBAF. But ultimately, the collaboration will be very similar among all of the state laboratories, with NBAF being our parent lab and our confirmatory testing place.
Great, thank you. Next question. The detection of the New World screwworm in Mexico is a huge threat to our domestic cattle producers. USDA estimates that a contemporary outbreak in Texas alone would cost producers $732 million per year. If you expand those results to the states within the historic range of the New World screwworm pre-eradication, a contemporary outbreak would cost producers as much as $4.3 billion per year and cause a total economic loss of over $10 billion. These are not losses our producers or our economy can afford. Again, for you, Dr. Riddick, surveillance and testing capacity was critical to eradicating this pest back in the 60s. How are the Nuln laboratories involved in preventing the spread of the screwworm, and what role would they play if the pest were to reach our shores?
So as stated earlier, the Nuln labs, many of them are universities and state departments of ag, which have specialists. These specialists are highly trained in to recognize diseases and new disease threats. At KVDL, like many of the other labs in the network, we have parasitologists and pathologists on staff that have already gone through training to recognize this. And so we will recognize through there. The NUL also is discussing it in its weekly calls, updating us and providing training. And in addition, with the caseload that comes through these diagnostic laboratories in the states, we see all sorts of things and animals for disposal, allowing us a large caseload to surveil coming in through routine testing.
Great. And final question will be for you, Dr. Main. 2 weeks ago, the One Big Beautiful Bill was signed into law. We were able to secure historic investments to modernize the farm safety net, promote ag products overseas, increase research, and important to this hearing, shore up our animal health tools. Under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the Nuln system will receive $10 million annually through fiscal year 2030 on top of existing discretionary spending. At a time when foreign animal diseases are threatening our producers on all fronts, how will this investment help your lab to prepare for and respond to an outbreak?
Well, thank you. It will be of tremendous help, I would say, from providing a base of capacity and capability, which is principally driven by our people. And that additional funding will enable, I think, across the laboratory to really help with, I would say, maintaining adequate preparedness via the people in the laboratory.
Right, Dr. Inslee, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's true. I'd agree with what Dr. Main said, really.
Right, well, I'll yield back the balance of my time, and next up, I will recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Riley, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for organizing this really important hearing, and to our witnesses, thank you for coming to testify, particularly given the extraordinary challenges a lot of you had for with traveling here. Dr. Riedelijk, am I pronouncing that correctly? Is it Riedelijk?
Very close, Retallick. Yep.
Okay. Well, I really appreciated your testimony about NALN's role in defending our country against agroterrorism. Food security is national security. I think that's become kind of cliche over time, but it's actually really true. And my colleague Zach Nunn on the other side of the aisle and I recently introduced bipartisan legislation that would crack down on agro-terror threats from the Chinese Communist Party. Our bill creates new criminal offenses for knowingly and recklessly importing high-risk agricultural biological agents, and we'll have tougher penalties for individuals who are doing that when they're tied to foreign adversaries. I think this is a really pressing issue that demands urgency, particularly in light of, I know you had in your written testimony one recent example of this. Was hoping you might be able to elaborate a little bit on how NALN's labs work together to detect and prevent agro-terrorist threats, and what more support you need from us on this committee to make sure we're keeping our food supply safe.
So for the agri-terrorism is a significant threat to the United States agriculture. And so through the laboratories, through NALN has weekly calls, and that's with all the laboratories, and that is key for communication about what we're seeing and how to communicate and what testing needs to be done. We know a way to control an outbreak, from agro-terrorism is through testing. It's one of those methods. And so the coordination through NALN with all of the state laboratories is vital in protecting or responding to an event of agro-terrorism very quickly. And so for support, again, you're already on that track for us. You've added funding for us to increase our capacity. And so that is a critical part for us, is maintaining funding or increasing funding to help support these laboratories in their surveillance for these type of agro-terrorism events.
Thank you. Is anybody else on the panel interested in addressing this issue of agro-terrorism?
I would just add to Jamie's comments that the NALN is a very frontline facing thing. So like just at our local laboratory there at Iowa, we have over 2,500 case submissions a week coming in from Iowa and from across the country that are food animal veterinarians that are working with their producers and ranchers about things that don't quite look right on their farm. And I think that really provides that, as Annette mentioned, is like that first line of defense of identification, and early response would be very critical in any such endeavor.
It's really helpful. Thank you. I'm honored to represent Cornell University, which, as you all know, is home to some of the brightest scientific minds working at the Animal Health Diagnostics Center, which is a level 1 NALN. I think you mentioned collaboration you all had done with the brilliant folks at Cornell, and as all of you highlighted in your testimony, the NALN program is just so important, not just for animal health, but also food security. And we're dealing with grocery prices here, right? Because if there are outbreaks, and that's going to drive grocery prices. One of the things I'd be interested in hearing a little bit more about with my limited time is making sure we have the workforce and the pipeline of folks coming into these labs. I think we're not doing a good enough job in this country making sure that STEM education is available in our rural communities, and it's something that I want to work on improving. Just curious with my limited time, and this can be for anybody, how do we make sure we've got the next generation of veterinarians and scientists and lab techs coming to you?
One thing I would mention is that, like the labs, and we're just example of one, but is very involved in the teaching and training of the next generation of veterinarians, diagnosticians, and veterinary scientists. And we use this flow, this very rich caseload of very real-world stuff that's going on out in the country, and we use that as fully integrated into the training and teaching the next generations of food, especially food animal interest veterinarians from across the country.
That's great. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I recognize the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Van Orten, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Hensley, I just want to say that we prayed for the entire state of Texas this morning at conference. It's just devastating. And if there's anything we can do to help, please. Losing a child is something I'm familiar with, and it's horrible. So I want you to know that we're with you here. And that's a bipartisan thing.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome,
Appreciate
sir.
that.
Who is taking the lead tracking this new world screwworm? Because it's not just going to have a devastating effect on beefers, it's going to ruin the state of Wisconsin's economy as far as dairy goes. And so who in this group is actually the focal point? I learned in the military that if everybody's in charge, no one is. And we need to make sure that someone is.
That's a good point. I think right now, of course, USDA is the primary agency because they're monitoring what's going on in Mexico. Texas Animal Health Commission is very involved in Texas, working with USDA. We're involved. There's a weekly call between Texas Animal Health Commission, Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, ourselves, Texas Department of State Health Services, and the USDA's veterinary services staff in Texas. And I think that's very important. So we're all hearing what the most current information is about where that screwworm is and what's potentially being done. There's money has been, I think, given to Mexico to try to retrofit a fruit fly plant down there. That's going to take time. There's efforts to start a plant there in Mission, at least to be able to rear some of the flies that come from Mexico or Panama for release. But all of these things take time. So I think surveillance is going to be extremely important. And that's going to be everybody in the state of Texas is going to have to be involved in that. But I think as far as leading the information right now, it's USDA and Texas Animal Health Commission.
Okay.
And I think everyone so far in the state is working together. Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service has been very involved. We did a online talk here a few weeks ago. There were 4,000 people that signed up for that to hear what the current status is, what is New World screwworm. We've got a population now even of ranchers that have no idea. They weren't alive back then.
So, Doctor,
yeah.
let me, hold on a sec here, please. So I'm going to have USDA and OMB in my office tomorrow morning at 08. If you're around, if they deliver your luggage tonight, that'd be great. I don't care what you look like. We're from Wisconsin. I'll give you a Miller Lite at 8 in the morning. No one cares. They're going to be in tomorrow morning. And again, that's a real invitation if you want to come. It's right upstairs here. But what type of relationships do you guys have with your foreign counterparts? So, this started down south. There's the plant in Panama. There's one in Mexico. There's one in actually the state of Georgia. And we're going to talk about trying to retrofitting these. What type of relationships do you guys have with your Mexican counterparts and Panamanian counterparts?
Okay, us as a diagnostic lab, we really do not have contacts with the Mexican officials.
Would it be helpful for you to do that, and can I facilitate that for you?
I think where we need to be, we need the current information, and whether that's coming from us working with the Mexicans or we need to have the current information coming from the USDA, and that goes back through the Texas Animal Health Commission. To me, that's where we need to be sure that everyone there is getting the most current information. And I think they've been doing a good job of trying to keep us updated on where that screwworm is. Is it still moving north?
Well, I think they have a tremendous economic incentive to do so because we get a lot of feeder cattle from Mexico,
have-
and that has
yes.
stopped.
Yes,
Right.
we have a tremendous incentive to do that.
Yes, sir. Well, with that, I yield back the balance of my time. And, sir, I'm sorry, before I yield back, I'd like to get a hold of you later.
Yes, sir.
And if anybody else would like to come to that meeting tomorrow morning, that's a real offer, too. I yield back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman rules. I now recognize the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Feenstra, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Mann. Thank you to each one of our witnesses. Greatly appreciate you here. The National Animal Health Laboratory Network plays a critical role in safeguarding animal health, supporting for disease surveillance, protecting security of our national food supply. This is very critical. We just passed some extra dollars in our reconciliation bill, which is wonderful. But Dr. Main, I would like to ask you, all right, so we have these dollars, which is wonderful. How does that affect you and your lab? But more importantly, what else can we do? I mean, is there more, instead of money, policy that we could go down and look at? What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the support of the NALM program as a whole, and then the additional funding that does trickle down essentially to the member labs. And again, that provides, I'd say, some base funding to help enhance the robustness of human resource-based capabilities that exist at these laboratories. And I just can't tell you how important I believe that is to be able to support the overall work that the lab does. I think as additional work in committee, I think what I would principally say is thank you, and I think like I mentioned in my testimony, is I think the leadership and support of seeing the value in disease knows no borders across our country. And so having that connectivity across states to be able to support as a true nation, I just think is really vital, and the NALM is the key to make that component work.
I want to talk about a couple of different diseases. Obviously, in my district and around the country, high-path avian influenza is so critical, dangerous right now. 180 million birds have been affected and been euthanized, 30 million in Iowa. Dr. Main, Secretary Rollins has done a great job putting things together. How do we eradicate this, or how do we get it to where we don't have millions of birds still dying? I mean, it seems like we understand that this is going to happen, but is there some preventative way that we can stop it?
Yeah, I think surveillance is key, biosecurity is key, and I think, as you know, there's been a lot of discussion about the opportunities for new tools to be in place via immunization. That could be another tool in the toolbox that would present as the opportunity for some strategic use cases to for lack of better words, the most vulnerable. But obviously there's lots of sensitivities around that, principally because of the impact of vaccination can have on international trade. And I know that's an active conversation that's occurring amongst poultry producers, dairy producers, and then the different segments of the poultry industry, both by segment of industry, meaning layer versus broiler versus turkey, as well as regions. And I think my only encouragement, just a personal opinion, would be to anything that can be done to help further those conversations, because I think we're going to need more tools than less, and the threats from wildlife are not going to go away.
Nope, that's exactly right. And then I want to speak on how the lab works to prevent and the consequences of African swine fever sweeping our nation. I mean, to me, it just worries me. And obviously, we just talked about biosecurity. What are the broader goals here of the pork sector? I mean, do you see anything else from the lab side or anything that we can do to make sure that this doesn't hit our swine?
Early detection will be absolutely paramount. Early detection will be absolutely paramount. Obviously, the labs play a role in that. And then advancing our systems of traceability that we have in this country is going to be also very critically to be able to track and trace in a modern way. And I think there's things afoot that are continuing to move that forward. And I think those would be two key things that would be critically important, as well as obviously the tremendous efforts that are happening at the border to mitigate entry, because that's the biggest win.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for your time. I mean, these are two critical situations that you get, all four of you are involved in, and I thank you for that. And with that, I yield back.
Given yields, I now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Gray, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Appreciate your participation. It's certainly nice to see Dr. Jones. Always great to see a fellow Californian here in the swamp, and with this humidity lately, I'm really understanding why they call this place the swamp. But yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to speak today on the vital role of the National Animal Health Laboratory Network and its role in safeguarding American agriculture. As a representative of the Central Valley in California, a region where agriculture couldn't be more important, we certainly know firsthand the importance of strong animal health systems. The National Animal Health Laboratory Network is a critical piece of America's biosecurity infrastructure, as it serves as our early warning system for animal diseases. Our dairy farms, poultry producers, livestock operations really form the backbone of California's ag economy, and the health of these animals is not just a matter of economics. As a major outbreak could devastate farms, threaten food security, and certainly would collapse local economies and the folks that I represent. NAHN's surge capacity is very important to a state like California. As Dr. Jones mentioned in her testimony, California's lab test sample load was 25 times higher than normal at the peak of H5N1 outbreak, and non-deployed technicians from labs across the country to assist in response efforts. The standardization of testing and methodology across NAHN's labs allowed for the immediate expansion of lab capacity, meaning efforts to address California's outbreak were taking place across 7 different states. When a farmer is deciding whether to depopulate thousands of birds, this is the data he is referencing. Simply put, the values of accurate and timely data when you are making potentially business-altering decisions is priceless. Couldn't be more important. $25 million a year is not enough to ensure that 64 labs across the country have the tools necessary to protect American agriculture. Dr. Jones, in your testimony, you highlight the importance of reducing the H5N1 virus in the environment and how the current methods of euthanizing infected flocks and promoting dairy immunity development through infection are not enough. What do you think are the best biosecurity methods dairy and poultry farmers should implement to reduce H5N1 presence on their farms?
Okay, that is the most difficult question in the world to answer right now, because dairy farms in particular are very open in states that enjoy good weather. That's why our dairies thrive, because the weather allows for open barns, which means animals move in and out, birds move in and out. So biosecurity is difficult. Movement control of cows is extremely important, which is why we quarantine our herds in California as we do in other states. But it's also why we brought up why I mentioned and why immunity is really important, because basic biosecurity will help stop the spread of virus from dairies to other dairies or to poultry, but it needs help from the animal's own immune system. So that's again why I'm really encouraging the nation to consider having that tool in their toolbox to vaccinate dairy cows. For poultry, biosecurity is a little bit more straightforward. They tend to be in more enclosed environments, and movement control, wild bird control, et cetera, seems to be pretty effective unless they're drowning in virus in the environment around them. Then their biosecurity will not work either.
Thank you.
But research is really important to understand the spread, and there's a lot of research going on nationwide.
I couldn't agree more. Farmers play a critical role in the fabric of disease response, as their cooperation and early reporting are essential to the rapid containment of outbreaks. The lab's work obviously can only be effective if they have that trust. I know that livestock producers can be wary of working with federal partners. How do you build and maintain good relationships with producers so that that work can continue?
So my two favorite questions. Livestock producers definitely can be very skeptical of government, so the key is to have a relationship, open communication, show them the facts, show them the tests, have reliable tests, and share information as fast as possible, and involve them in helping with best practices for mitigating the effects of the disease. So in California, I wouldn't say all the producers love us, but we certainly have a very good relationship with them, and they are our very most important cooperators and are on our side.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that.
The gentleman's time's expired.
Yep, was going to yield back.
Okay, thank you. Next, I recognize the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Baird, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank our witnesses for being here. You know, I recognize how important your efforts are in protecting our livestock industry, but agriculture in general across our country. So I think it's very important. And I was glad to hear several of you mention that livestock and biological security is also food security, and that's very important to all of us. And Dr. Jones, you mentioned it wasn't in your testimony, but I saw the figures that I thought were relevant to what we're talking about today. There's what, 25 million? You have down 25 million to 64 labs across the country to maintain the skills, equipment, and all that sort of thing, which I think is an important factor to keep in mind when you think that HAPI could cost USDA about $2 billion. Foot and mouth disease could cost us $200 billion. I'm just trying to establish the relevance and the importance of what you do around the country. So I would give you the opportunity, Dr. Jones, to elaborate, because also in your testimony, you mentioned that you would be asking for dairy cattle to be vaccinated ahead of poultry, swine, and dairy, and that. So, poultry, swine, and beef. So, would you care to elaborate on that?
Yeah, what my intent with that comment is, if I was a swine producer, I would be asking USDA and my state animal health officials and vaccine manufacturers to look into vaccinating dairy cows to protect my pigs. I'd want those dairy cows vaccinated. If I was a beef producer, I would want those dairy cows vaccinated. If I was a poultry producer, I would want those dairy cows vaccinated, because the way that a dairy clears virus is living through the infection as it moves through the herd. Some of our herds have been under quarantine for over 300 days. So that means they are potentially spreading virus in the environment that long, because we're reducing virus in those herds through natural immunity. If we could vaccinate them, it would move it faster. The comment on trade is the key to that, but we can't have those trade discussions if we don't push dairy vaccine a little bit harder.
That brings up a couple of quick questions. When you think about a lot of our swine producers in my area in Indiana, we're in confinement units, so you have more biological or more biocontrol of birds getting into the buildings to a certain extent, whereas cattle are the same way. That a lot of them are concentrated, the feedlot cattle. But the range cattle, is there a difference between the range cattle and the dairy cattle, because they're confined in most cases? Is there a difference there in the spread of disease through birds?
I think you were asking, is there a difference, does the disease have a preference for dairy versus beef?
Yeah, the beef cow, the cow-calf herds. I mean, I'm wondering how about.
Yeah. So there is some breed specific proclivity of the virus, mostly because of the mammary gland. So definitely Holsteins and Jerseys seem to be most susceptible to this virus. There's no evidence that the virus has been in other breeds, for example, typical beef breeds. We have seen it in young stock, though. It is in calves, it is in feeder cows, but primarily dairy breeds.
So you probably know Dr. Brett Marsh in Indiana, Purdue University, and he's now the dean of the College of Veterinary Medicine. So, but I'd like to give all the others an opportunity to just comment on one thing. I could ask questions all the rest of the afternoon, but anyway, on the vaccine, your perspective on vaccines for any of the species for protecting against HAPI.
I think it needs to be explored. My understanding, the technology exists, and it's the principal barrier to move forward is navigating potential impacts on international trade.
I would agree. From what I know, there are 2 vaccine companies looking at 2 different vaccines for dairy cattle right now. But I think what Annette and Roger said, we do have to look at trade, but we have to weigh that against being able to stop this virus in dairy cattle. So.
Dr. Relic, you got 10 seconds.
Oh, I'm going to agree with my fellow witnesses. The impact is on the international trade, and there's a lot of research going on in the vaccination area, and so as more of those conversations happen, we'll develop their importance.
That's one way to end the conversation, I guess. Thank you.
Gentleman's time is
Now you
expired.
go back.
Okay. The gentleman yields, I think, and the chair now recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Harris, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank all of you on the panel for your time today. And just a couple of questions I wanted to toss out here. First, Dr. Redlick, your testimony explains that the Kansas Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory joined Nolan Network in 2004, became a Level 2 member in 2016, and advanced to a Level 1 member in 2019. And of course, as we've talked about, Level 1 labs have the highest standards and have the most advanced diagnostic capabilities, among other things. So if you could take just a moment and explain the process of going from a Level 2 member to a Level 1 member.
So the NOLN has a matrix they put out every 2 years for the labs to assess where the lab is on capacity and the ability to respond. And in this matrix, there is facility requirements, what equipment do you have, what's your staffing look like, what outreach are you doing, and what NOLN groups, technical groups are you working with. And so for us, we were able to get access to BSL-3 testing facilities, including necropsy facilities at Kansas State, increased equipment, and got more active and involved in the NOLN through outreach and technical groups. And so with that, we were able to raise to a Level 1.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think it's important that we see as many labs as possible continue to advance and move forward to achieve Level 1 status in order to best fulfill their purposes. I guess my other question, and I would just toss this out to any of you on the panel that would be willing to share, one of the roles that all of your labs play is communicating with producers about emerging and existing animal health threats. How do you go about those educational efforts, and how have you been the beneficiary of such efforts? I can go down the row if you'd like.
I can start with that one from the KVDL perspective. We have webinars we do for clients, quarterly newsletters, email lists, so if a new disease pops up, we can get it out to our clientele and let them know something's there. We have veterinarians that attend producer meetings around the state, and we also have a field investigation unit. And then being located at the College of Veterinary Medicine, the CE events bring in those veterinarians too, and we were able to communicate that route with them too. So we have several ways to communicate what's going on with our producers.
Okay.
Yeah. Sort of the same thing at TVMDL. We do podcasts. We put educational information on our website. We have a veterinary services section that we routinely interact with veterinarians and producers. We attend producer meetings, give presentations there. We work with the AgriLife Extension Service to help provide information through that resource. So we have a number of outreach efforts that we do to try to get information out to producers and veterinarians, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, I would just say that our principal focus is on educating our veterinarians, the practicing veterinarians, and then they in turn are working with their producers. And so it's that, and like 98% of our caseload is the same practicing veterinarians submitting week after week after week. And so we have really great, I'd say, close working relationships with those veterinarians about what's happening with not only with their caseload, but with the lab more broadly. And then they're in turn sharing that with the veterinarians, in addition to more traditional partnerships with our extension service.
Same in California.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for sharing that, and I know that this is an important, very important way that we're communicating and getting that information out there, and indeed, it makes a difference in the entire food security of our entire nation. So thank you for all that you do. Mr. Chairman, with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields. I now recognize the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Mrs. Hayes, for 5 minutes.
Good morning, and thank you to our witnesses for your testimony and for being here today. The National Animal Health Laboratory Network plays a key role in protecting food supply chains, identifying disease trends, and limiting the spread of infectious disease among animals. The network also plays a key role in educating producers and the public about potential disease outbreaks. The Connecticut Veterinary Medical Diagnostic Laboratory at UConn is the only network laboratory in New England serving producers in Connecticut and across the region. Each year, the lab at UConn, I didn't mention I'm from Connecticut, trains approximately 40 graduate and undergraduate students and provides them with hands-on learning opportunities. The lab has identified this as an area for growth where it can develop better programming for students to gain real-life experiences. Dr. Jones, UC Davis offers numerous outreach opportunities for pre-veterinary students, including summer programs for middle school and high school students to learn about the field. I'm an educator by trade, and I am always thinking about pipeline, capacity building, the future, how we engage young people much earlier and introduce them to the potential of so many careers that are within their grasp. Can you describe how your laboratory partners with UC Davis to train veterinary students?
Sure. The Animal Health Lab at Davis not only has a lab located at Davis, but they also have lab sites at different locations throughout the state. So they're able to partner with not only the students there at Davis, but also bring them a little bit further down into our Central Valley, which is really the heart of agriculture in California, to give them a little bit more of a taste of the real world of producing food for large groups of people. So that's one of the examples of how they interact with the vet school and with the undergraduates in high schools.
Can you talk a little bit about how you utilize the National Animal Health Network Laboratory Network to perform outreach to students and just, I guess, expose them? Because what I've heard, many young people have an idea of what they think careers and professions are, but it's not until they have some actual practical interaction that they really kind of see themselves doing that work.
A lot of that type of role, if you're talking about the laboratory network itself,
or any network that you use.
Yeah, a lot of that exposure comes through summer hires and tours, and it gives students a real flavor for the science technology involved in today's animal health world and food safety world.
Dr. Mame, I see you nodding your head. Did you want to add something?
Yes. So in Iowa, it's very much I think it's over half of the students at Iowa State College of Vet Med graduating go into either mixed or large animal practice. And the vast majority of those students are not farm kids. They're students that are bright, and they could be through work experiences at school, internships, whether in undergraduate and externships in veterinary school, got turned on to animal agriculture and have chosen to make a profession of it.
Thank you, and I appreciate you adding that because many of my farmers are telling me now, like their children don't want to go into ag-related fields, so we have to be more attractive to a broader network of young people in order to infuse this pipeline. In 2023, a study by Johns Hopkins University found that the number of food animal veterinarians has decreased by 90% since World War II. Today, less than 2% of veterinarians work exclusively with food animals. Outside the lab, veterinarians are the first line of defense during a disease outbreak, meeting first with impacted farmers and then reporting their findings to network labs. Dr. Redelick, in the materials you provided to our committee, you mentioned that the Kansas State Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory experienced a 62% faculty turnover in 2022. Has your lab worked to address these shortages, and what could Congress do to help with that effort?
I do think that all the labs saw shortages in 2022. For us, it was getting in more technicians. We developed a technician internship pipeline or a program, and so we started bringing in those younger generations for technicians. We were able to increase our residents. Our residents are those training to be faculty, and so we were able to increase our pathology residents. And so, again, we're thankful for the support we get through the NOLN. That does help support salaries, and so that investment is going back to helping train those technicians with salary support, providing the internships, and helping us train future faculty through residencies and graduate programs, which is important in keeping our staffed.
Thank you. And with that, I yield back and thank you for your, oh, hey.
Young lady yields back. Next, we go to the great state of Indiana, Representative Mesmer.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, witnesses, for being here today. With turkey products accounting for nearly 3/4 of the total livestock and animal production in my district, high-path avian influenza remains a major threat. Thanks to the outstanding efforts of Purdue's Animal Disease Diagnostic Laboratory and on-farm biosecurity measures, my district avoided an outbreak this year. But even without a confirmed case, our farmers are daily in contact with Purdue ADDL. As the only NOLN lab in the state, Purdue ran more than 11,000 avian flu tests in the first 2 months of this year alone. Dr. Main and Dr. Vitalik, each of your labs also serve as the only NOLN facility in your state, giving the strains ag states of our size can put on a singular facility. How important is it that our labs are well-staffed and equipped with state-of-the-art technology?
It's very important that we are very well staffed. We watch our molecular sections. NOLN is primarily molecular tests, and so making sure we are rapid on keeping those staffs. We also have on-call for those sections. It's important to make sure that we stay staffed. And the equipment that we get through the NOLN funding helps us when we can add equipment or replace aging equipment. That serves to increase our capacity also.
And I would just echo that, is that it's been very important to us as the state of Iowa to have a robust, state-of-the-art, food animal-centered veterinary diagnostic laboratory to support Iowa and then broader U.S. animal agriculture. And so we've been very blessed in that way. And I think, and it's being leveraged in that we kind of function as an extension of the practitioners and veterinary practices that we serve. And I think it's that day-to-day, we're essentially an extension of their business as a trusted partner, and we think those relationships that we use day-to-day can be leveraged, are leveraged greatly when you get into times of crisis.
Thank you. For the purpose of bringing funding into perspective, would each of you share how much federal funding your facility receives compared to the value of the livestock industry your lab protects?
For the state of Kansas, for the level 1, the annual infrastructure is approximately $250,000. The Kansas livestock is $12.9 billion. We do receive many years supplemental funding also in addition, but it's primarily that infrastructure, $250,000 from the NOLN as a level 1 laboratory.
Right. Same here as the 250,000, and then Iowa would be about 35 billion. Animal health.
Same here.
Excellent. Well, each year, animal product sales in Indiana total more than $3.5 billion, and based on your responses, I think it's safe to say the investments H.R. 1 included for Nolan will be paid back in spades. So thank you for that. Also, last Tuesday, Secretary Rollins issued a National Farm Security Action Plan. The plan highlights the importance of addressing biosecurity threats from our foreign adversaries. Dr. Vitalik, in your opinion, is Nolan currently equipped to handle major bioterrorism? And if not, what do we need to do to make our nation and our ag system protected?
Again, the NOLN, a key part of NOLN is that communication among the 64 laboratories. It provides that robust network, which is that first line of defense. And so I believe the NOLN is very well equipped to respond. Capacity can always be increased and improved in efficiency. And so any funding that can help with salaries and equipment to increase that capacity for the labs is always going to be beneficial in an instance like that.
Because one of the things when it's an early detection system, but then it's also going back to the need for laboratory capacity that can, again, knows no boundaries within the U.S. is very important, especially when you're getting into multifocal incidences. And the vast majority of the testing involved is demonstrating where the disease or incursion is not, to be able to maintain continuity of business outside of the pinpoint of this is infected. But the proving where it's not is far greater than 95% of all the testing that happens.
Okay. Thank you for all of your answers, and I yield back my time.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. Our chairman had to go vote in another committee, so he's asked me to share with you some of his closing remarks. The first being how much we appreciate all of you taking the time out of your schedules to be here, because we think this is an important aspect of agriculture and food security. But anyway, he says, today's hearing provided the perfect opportunity to highlight for critical work undertaken each and every day by the National Animal Health Laboratory Network. NAL's system is a shining example of what federal, state, and local collaboration looks like when it's done correctly. And the work of NAL's laboratory is absolutely critical to protecting our domestic animal supply, our producers, and national security. So to our witnesses, thank you for being here, from walking us through the day-to-day operations of NAL laboratories, and to explaining the detailed diagnostic testing you and your colleague do in answering our questions about a whole host of foreign animal diseases. Your testimony and expertise have been invaluable. So we look forward to continuing to work with you all on the animal health issues for the 119th Congress and for the years to come. Thank you, and this meeting is adjourned.